I had to learn a lot, that I had to change and choose what I should think of, where I could decide to stay in this bad state, or I could use my tools that I've learned. It was a process, and the brain does like to stay in its state. It does not like to change.
Even if that's a horrible state.
Right. It does not like it.
Because familiar is safe.
Right.
Even if it's awful.
Yeah, it feels like you're being protected when really it's harming you.
Yeah.
So it was a learning curve, but we got through it.
Yeah. Hey everybody, I'm here with Calvin and Juliebeth, and their story is really amazing and an important one for people to hear because they really struggled for a lot of time. I'm just gonna let you guys tell what you were struggling with and how you found me and what we ended up going through together and allowing Juliebeth to claim her power back.
Basically, Calvin caught on fire and burned up himself, and I saw the whole ordeal. I was able to push away my feelings, everything, while we were going through it. But once we got the okay that he was fine, that's when the depression, the recurring thoughts of the trauma from the burn happened. I was also going through some health things. We didn't know what was going on until later on. We found out that I was diagnosed with Lyme, mold, babesia, several other things. And mast cell activation. So my body was becoming to the state where everything was not safe. Shampoo, makeup, foods, except for 9 foods.
And the 9 foods was including like
Salt
oil and salt and yeah.
I remember you were on such a limited diet.
It was like 5 foods plus like oil and salt and stuff. So
it was. I remember maybe 3 foods that were actual foods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember your pain and suffering because that intensified on itself.
Right.
Because it was so fearful to think I'm never going to have a normal life again.
No, it was, and everything you would look up on the internet, it would be saying you're going to have to go to a liquid diet. You're not going to be able to eat anything ever again.
And when you were looking on the internet, you had said it was mast cell activation, and I called up a dear friend of mine who's an amazing doctor and said, hey, how do I help this woman? And she basically said, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
And she normally has solutions for everything. What else were you looking up to hopefully find answers for?
Just any type of hope, any type of relief. And too, I was looking for, I was losing a lot of hair, especially in the front of my head.
And weight. I
would go to acupuncture, and the massage lady was terrified to touch me because of how skinny I was. We didn't have a whole lot of hope. A lot of people were like, cut out all these foods. And so my doctor, she said, cut out these foods, and in 6 months, you'll slowly be able to reintroduce. That was not the case for me.
And we had also, she was itching from mast cell and stuff, and we had also, been searching for, it wasn't just Google, we had been going to places, we looked for the top doctor in Nashville, for allergist stuff, thinking it was an allergy before she was diagnosed with mast cell. And he was just pumping her full of antihistamines, and I think it was prescription strength antihistamines, and that wasn't even touching it.
No, and we went to an integrative place in Brentwood, which I had been going prior. Didn't help me. I was doing neurofeedback, biofeedback, because when you're constantly in that state, I could relive the trauma 24/7. I could go back to that place. I could remember the smell of the smoke, go back to me screaming Calvin's name. I can replay all of it over and over. It was awful. There was no relief. I was constantly in that state of fight or flight.
So how long before your symptoms really started to occur did you experience, and how did the burn situation happen?
So I guess it was before I even burnt myself, she was already having problems with just other stuff, but we didn't know what it was.
And it wasn't as severe.
So it wasn't as severe either. But it was at that point it was well, what shampoo's making me itch or something like that. It wasn't freaking out basically, right? And then after the burn, so we were burning a log in the backyard, and had got some gas splashed back on me. Long story short, so I burnt myself really bad on the side. And then after I was better was when it all came to a head. She was basically surviving before that, doing okay, and then right after that was when it just
it's kind of the straw that broke the camel's back,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Which is often the case. In fact, there's a picture that I love in a fairly famous book. It's a cartoon of a camel with all these packages of straw on its back, and they're all labeled. One of them's, you know, toxins, one of them's not enough love, one of them's, you know, lack of self-care, stress. And so people often ask me, well, what's the number one thing I have to do to get healthy? And I love to show them that picture and just say, take the weight off the camel.
Yeah. It might not be like a burn, like for other people. It might not be a burn. It might be, you know, just a life event, just in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the thing that caused a massive downhill turn.
Right. That's finally what broke me, basically.
And then how long was it after that before you were finding yourself on this extremely limited diet, losing weight? How many medications did you find that you were exploring needing to seek help with?
We tried, I'm not sure, we tried so many different supplements, so many different medications. I think the biggest thing at the time was my mental health, because we could not.
As far as medication, she was taking a whole lot of supplements because we were at an integrated place anyway. But the problem was she couldn't even take, like, if we wanted to take like a prescription, whatever, right? Couldn't even take it because she would react so much.
So I was taking GABA, L-theanine, CBD. We had timers going constantly, just so that way I would be not in a terrible place, basically. I mean, the suicidal thoughts were constantly going too.
A perfect example of that too is we had scheduled a trip to Colorado, but we knew that wasn't, you know, a time to go. And then her happy place is Florida. So we went to Florida. You know, you'd think, well, change environment or something would help. And it was good, like Florida was still good, but we still had timers, sometimes timers, and sometimes she just knew, like, hey, I need to take CBD again or something.
Yeah.
And then, you know, with nowadays, it you know, CBD and stuff's better, but it felt like you were like almost a druggie or something, trying to find where to get your hook at or something, just to be able to calm her down. And then, you know, what was it, L-theanine and stuff like that, taking that also, just consistently.
And I remember at one point, coming off of antidepressants was a big deal.
Yes.
And I know, Calvin, you had researched a lot of support groups and wanted to get other people's opinions on that, other people's experiences on that. What was it like for both of you to navigate those waters?
I was already off when the burn and fire had happened.
Oh, okay.
But we had debated on me going back on it. And my doctor told me, if you go back on this, potentially you could lose even more foods.
The biggest thing is we didn't know what would, like, both of us was trying to figure out, should we go back on it or not? But then, you know, since she was already off for like 4 months or something, then a lot of the groups, there's a good group on Facebook that talks about it. And since she was already off of it for a certain amount of time, I think it was like a 3-month time frame, they were saying that, you know, the reaction to going back on it could be just as bad or worse than you know, staying off of it.
Right.
And she'd already been off of it, so we're like, well, let's ride the roller coaster, keep going.
Got it.
And then when we were in Florida was actually when my mom had found you, and I think that we actually called you from Florida, like, hey, can we do this? And was at that point desperate to figure out what to do.
Yeah. So what did your mother say to you that made you think, yeah, I want to give this a try? Because I had already worked with her, I think.
Yeah, I think you'd talked to her, but you hadn't, like, she hadn't seen you or anything.
Okay.
But at that point, nothing against you, but we were just desperate.
No, I mean, I get a lot of people that are desperate. Honestly,
we were just desperate.
It's helpful for me when people are desperate and willing.
We were already, like, integrative and stuff, so we were open-minded, and, you know, just open-minded in general. But then as far as, like, what brought us to you, it was like, you know, what's it gonna hurt?
Right. Well, my experience is that when people are needing a change, I always like to work with people that are at 8, 9, or a 10 need and commitment to change, because the brain likes what's familiar.
Right.
And even in your case, as much as the need was really, really high, it took a while before there was a 10,000% willingness, because the brain feels safe with what's familiar.